Welcome to the I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. I'm author and speaker Carrie Severson. In each episode, I'll share stories and tips from my experience with caregiving and advocacy through my husband's cancer journey. Hi, welcome back to I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. All right, so the last I left you, Gavin had just gotten admitted to the long-term cancer wing. I went home, slept. He woke me up with a text at 5 a.m. saying, hey, can you bring my comforter? Can you bring the comforter, my pillows, and some clothes? So I was back at the hospital at 6 a.m. I wanted to be there for rounds. I wanted to know what was going on. Considering we didn't know when he was going to get a feeding tube and he couldn't really talk. And the thing is, when you're a caregiver, you're married to the person, it really does feel like, I hate to say it, but we were in it together. And I felt guilty for not being there. And that's a huge thing that caregivers face. It was such a heavy burden to have to hold all of it, the pain management, the timing of it, because he was unconscious for a lot of it. He was so high from all the drugs. He was so scared. I was scared. And when he was admitted, I wanted to be there for him. I didn't know how to sort of sever the energy of what he was experiencing and what I was experiencing. I just knew I had to be there. And I didn't know why just yet. I'll get to that in a little bit. So it's Tuesday, February 27th, 2024. I get there, I go upstairs. He's having a hard time. He's in a lot of discomfort because of the burns. And at this point, they classified him as a second degree burn patient. So while the very first thing, he had already gotten his labs done. They were doing an x-ray to make sure pneumonia wasn't setting in because of all the mucus. And the burn team was there. I hadn't even had coffee yet. I'm having a conversation with the night nurse, getting an update. He had spiked a fever. He was disorientated. And I'm like, fuck, I should have stayed overnight. Even before coffee, I was pissed at myself for not staying overnight. And I'm like, that's it. I'm staying here. I'm just going to stay here. I put my stuff in the back corner, introduce myself to the nurse coming on. I tuck him in. Everyone leaves the room. I tuck Gavin in and make sure he's doing okay. He's having a hard time keeping this oxygen mask on and this thing up his nose, and his oxygen level just kept dropping. He has to have a heart monitor on because the drugs he's on are so potent that they could stop his heart. I mean, like every possible scenario that could be presented is there. He's being looked at for pneumonia. He's a burn patient. He's high risk for cardiac failure. It's overwhelming. It's scary. He's in and out of consciousness. He sees me. He winks. He would wink at me if we were like sifting through garbage. I'm like, calm down. Jeez Louise. Anyway. So I make sure that nobody's coming in to update me or to do anything with him until I need coffee and I need like a cold bagel. Give me like 10 minutes. The nurse is like, yeah, you're good. Okay, so caregivers, medical advocates, make sure, The nurses will always say, you can just push the button. I'll come in and see you. No, I'm sorry. No, I've done that before. This isn't my first time having to make sure a loved one gets treated properly at the hospital. I've done it several times. Did it with all my grandparents. I've done it with my parents. I've done it with my sister. I'm going to come see you when he needs something. I make sure I know who's taking care of my person. I make sure I know where the charge nurse on the floor is, what her name or his name is. I make sure I know when rounds happen and when shift happens. I keep everything posted on the whiteboard, like my phone number, additional point of contact if they can't get a hold of me. And I kept that information about shift changes and who was what. I kept it on my phone in the notes section. When you're dealing with something like this, there's so many teams involved. There's a lot of doctors. You're going to be introduced to a ton of people. There's attendings, internal medicine, palliative care. For him, it was radiation, chemo, and the ER department has all different teams than the outpatient teams. So I was meeting all new people. I had a note section based on the day that we were there and who was the person I was speaking to and what their role was. It's a lot of management. It was very overwhelming. So I get some coffee in me. I get a bagel in me. I make sure Gavin knows how I feel about coffee. So I didn't care that coffee was in the room, but I wouldn't ever bring food in the room. Coffee was probably the last thing I needed because I was definitely in fight or flight. My nervous system was just, a hornet's nest. But it's a habit. I can't help it. So I always had a cup of coffee in my hand. At one point, one nurse actually did take it away from me. And she's like, I think you've had enough of this. It was like full and cold. I probably had like 2 sips of it. This is days into my experience. And she's like, I think you should just have more water. No more coffee. She was so sweet. Anyway, so at like 8:30, the attending physician comes in, introduces herself, and she's gorgeous and she's decked out. And I'm in like a olive army, huge cargo pants. And I'm in like, pink sparkly, Crocs. There's a reclining chair, a super uncomfortable one in the room. And I'm like leaning back at it. She walks in and she's in like stilettos and this beautiful dress. Her hair's perfect. She's got makeup on and I look like I'm praying. I think I brushed my teeth. I don't know. My hair's in a messy bun and I'm having a hard time getting out of this recliner. I mean, it looked like Chandler Bing trying to get out of the recliner. It was humiliating, absolutely embarrassing. She introduces herself. I introduce myself. Gavin's passed out. He was passed out most of the time. She tells me about his vitals, about the results, that they are concerned he spiked a fever. They are concerned about pneumonia setting in, which would be really bad. And then she says again, you got him here in the nick of time. And I'm like, yeah, I understand. I heard it yesterday. And she goes, she's holding on to my arm, my shoulder. And she's like, you're doing a great job. He's in the right place now. You can relax. We'll take care of him. We've got him. She's like, she said something about, she said he's in the long-term cancer wing and people here are prepared to work with patients like Gavin. And when she said it, again, I was like, why is this such a special case? And when she said it, it struck my heart. My breath was sort of stuck in my body. I think the room started to spin because she like gently pushed me back into the reclining chair and she like, patted my hair and like, patted my head and she's like, it's going to be okay. And then she's like, we'll keep in touch. We have your information. And then she said, I don't believe he's on the schedule today for a feeding tube. So radiation was still going to happen. Chemotherapy might happen. And I told her what happened the last time he had chemo, and that if he finds out about chemo, that he'll probably protest it because he's so scared to do it again, particularly on all these new drugs. He was on the thing that was stronger than morphine. They still had him on oxy. He was still doing gabapentin, but at this point, everything was liquid and going directly into his veins. So, I mean, this man, he was so high. He was on constant fluids, which I was grateful for. But she's like, he'll most likely have to get the tube tomorrow. And so then she explained what was going to happen. She's like, well, we're watching the fever. We're watching pneumonia. He'll get the feeding tube on Wednesday. And what's going to happen is they give like 4 ounces at a time for the first 24 hours. And at that point, I realized, oh, this is the long-term cancer wing. We're here for a while. She's like, they're going to give him a little bit, 4 ounces at a time, make sure his body can tolerate it. And then they'll do bolus feedings, which are bags, just big doses, I think for 48 or 72 hours. So she's like, at the earliest, you'll get out of here on like Friday or Saturday. I think Saturday at the earliest. And I was like, God, he's going to fucking hate this. He's going to hate it. I was grateful. I was like, okay, this is the thing for caregivers. It was me doing all of this. It takes an entire hospital and all these different departments, all these moving pieces. There's so many components in treating disease. It is overwhelming. And when you're in it by yourself, it's paralyzing. So she leaves. I lean back in the recliner. My mom texts me, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? She wants to come up and see him. And I'm like, okay, well, sure. Maybe in a little bit. And the room is quiet. I am praying that this little room become our like protective bubble, and that it be like our sanctuary. Meanwhile, next door is somebody who, there's like a biohazard garbage can outside the room. I'm seeing people running around in like full yellow gear up. The poor staff was so understaffed. There was typically one person for this entire floor. There had to be 6 patients when we arrived. I'm not surprised. Nurses are the most burnt out in the healthcare community. But when you're on this side of it, you still want answers. You still want your patient to be the first person cared for. And obviously that can't happen. So later that day, it's time for radiation. And Gavin wakes up and he asks me, when is the feeding tube? And I'm like, they're not doing it until tomorrow. And he points to my purse and then goes like this. If you're not watching on YouTube, he is mimicking a steering wheel. And I'm like, no, you're staying here. I'm not taking you home. This is where you are. This is where you need to be. And he shakes his head no. And he points to the door. And I'm like, no, Gavin, you're staying here. I'm like, I'm not taking you home. They're going to take you down to radiation. So he needs an anti-anxiety. And I don't think they got it to him in time. So he leaves. He's so high. the person that actually took him down to radiation was really nice. He was like, he was talking to Gavin. Gavin was passed out, but he was telling Gavin that there was a section in the hospital that he was going to, show him because there were all these cool like images on the wall and we're going on an adventure. And he's trying to make it. I was really grateful for that. I thought that was really sweet. But he came back not long after. And I'm like, what happened? And the guy's like, he had a panic attack. He couldn't do it. I'm like, well, he does need anti-anxiety meds. Anyway, I'm sure you notice that I say we a lot. If you're a caregiver, I think that's common and it's something that I consciously work on. But maybe you do it too. Would love to know. So later that day, the PA has the balls to show up. And I was under the impression that we weren't going to have to deal with anyone that we normally saw because everyone in the ER on all these departments from radiation to chemo, internal medicine, dietitian, they were all different. It was like church and state. Apparently they were talking to one another, but we didn't see a single person we knew. So when she walks into the room, oh, fuck. I don't say a thing to her. Welcome to our humble home for the next God knows how long. You are not welcome here. I didn't say a thing to her. She's standing in the room staring at Gavin. Gavin's passed out. And she's like, well, you got him here in the nick of time. And I'm like, man, I was reclined in the recliner and I didn't bother looking up, but in my mind, I thought, you're lucky I'm in this fucking recliner right now. So she says something about needing to get Gavin up because she needs to talk to him about radiation. So she's gently like shaking his feet and he eventually wakes up and she's like, so I hear you couldn't do radiation. And she's like, we really need you to continue doing it. Can you just take a Mucinex to reduce the mucus in your mouth? That's what most patients do. They just take a Mucinex. I think you need to do that and just sort of muscle through this so you can finish radiation. I could not believe her. I was like, who in the hell? Get the fuck out of this room. I was so pissed. So Gavin was pissed as well. He reaches over. He had to have been coherent to hear that. He reaches over, he grabs a suction, he suctions the mucus out of his mouth and he says, Mucinex, and he was very clear. He's like, Mucinex does not work for me. It has not worked for me in 20 years. It makes my cough worse. I'm not taking it. And he had to use a suction cup to remove the mucus from his mouth several times in that like 2 or 3 sentence statement because his mouth filled up consistently. It was like the second he said something, it was full. And she again pushed it. She's like, well, all of our patients take this. I think you should just take this. So he's like, I need you to get me liquid anti-anxiety. And she's like, it's going to be so hard to find it. Are you sure you just can't take Mucinex? And he shakes his head and he's like, no, I need you to treat me, not them. And she's like, I am treating you. Gavin stops talking. He actually lowers his bed and he tries to fall back to sleep. And at that point, I'm like, I think he's done talking. And she's like, all right, well, I'll see what I can do. And she walks out. Incredible. I was just, holy crap. Just rude, just gross. That was fairly early on in the day. The number of people that came in to talk to us was overwhelming. And he couldn't do it. He couldn't physically speak. He was constantly in and out of consciousness. But eventually, I got it to the point where I would see people walking in and I would meet him at the door. Examine Gavin, obviously, but questions you have about him let's go into the hallway. And so I would do everything I can to remove them from his space because he was overwhelmed and it was making it harder for him. And when it comes to life-threatening illness, if your person's dying in this room, and he slowly is, he's in the hospital, but he still has cancer. He's still having a really hard time doing treatment. He hasn't ate in God knows how long at this point. Give him as much support as you can, give him as much space as he needs. And you can talk to me. I can do it. I can answer whatever you need. It was nuts. It was absolutely crazy. The more he talked, the more mucus built up. And so eventually he just, he stopped. So at some point that day, the social worker comes and Gavin was like, I'm just, he just like shook his head and shrugged his shoulders. And, he pointed to me, he pointed to her, and he pointed at the door. And I'm like, Gavin knows his mental status. He can't talk. I'm like, you and I can have a quick chat, but like, he's overwhelmed as it is. What you have to say to him isn't going to make things better at this point. So let's take it outside. So she and I went into, I think it's a quiet room. It's in the hallway, down the hall from his room. I appreciated it. There's no bells or whistles going off. There's no alarms going off. I exhaled a little bit. I had a really good cry. And she didn't, the social worker didn't say anything that I didn't already know, right? I'm in burnout. I need to take care of myself. I need to remove myself from the room often. He's in good hands. But there was something internally that prevented me from leaving that space. And I'll tell you tomorrow all about it, or actually next week, because this is a weekly podcast. If you're a caregiver going through hell right now, know that you're not alone. I'm thinking of you. I'm sending you a lot of love. When you are in a life-threatening sort of scenario with the person you're caring for, there's a lot happening. If you're one record state, make sure you're recording things. Use notes on your phone. Make sure you know who's who, different teams, their roles, and how to get a hold of them. And most importantly, make sure they know how to get a hold of you. I am sending you a lot of love. Please remember, if you're a family caregiver, it's always okay to have somebody else do the dishes. I'll talk to you next week.